Today we will study about the Indian Constitution, and that is the introduction to Constitution. We will study about the basics of Indian constitutions. We will not go in much in detail. Specifically, we will try to stick to the syllabus as given over here. That is history of the making of the Indian Constitution, and the meaning and importance of the Constitution, salient feature and preamble of Indian Constitution, fundamental rights, meaning and limitations to the fundamental right, directive principles of state policies, and fundamental duties, their enforcement and relevance. This is the syllabus given over here, and specifically today we will study about history of the making of Indian Constitution. Before starting and studying about the history of making of the Indian Constitution, to know about the process, how it goes on, and how we reach up to the point that we were able to make our constitution after independence. Before studying about that history, we will try to understand what do you mean by constitution, what constitution actually means. Constitution is nothing but a document that is the supreme, or that is the first law of the land in any country. That is the ultimate law, that is known as constitution. Why it is required? Because to have rule of law. There are many kind of government exists, like there is maybe dictatorship, there may be some oligarchy, there may be some kind of there may be some kind of rule of kings, like they may rule according to their own whims and fancies. But while we are talking about the present time, most of the country they are having democracy, and for democracy constitution is the most essential thing to have, because if there is rules and laws are defined or written over somewhere, then only we can have a democracy in that country. Specifically, we will read it. The term constitution refers to the fundamental legal framework that establishes and regulates the political, legal, and administrative system of a country. In this document, how the political, legal, and administrative system of the country actually works and behaves, and are the basic principles of this system to work, is defined in the constitution, as we will study with respect to the Indian constitution. It is supreme law of the land, outlining the structure of the government, distribution of powers, and right and duties of the citizens. And this is the constitution is the have the ultimate authority in any democracy, because it stops, or it don't let anyone to be dictator, or to rule arbitrarily, because it establishes the rule of law, that everyone works according to the rule of law, and a rule given in the ultimate document or ultimate law of the land. Then the rule of law, of course, is the same thing, that in any land or in any country, that rule is being done through according to the law, not according to the whims and fancies, or with the will of some dictator or some oligarchy or some group of people. Here are some key principles of rule of law. First of all is supremacy of law. That is, law is above everyone. No one is above the law, and be it anyone in the country. Everyone is comes within this law. Everyone has to follow these laws. And the second thing is, all actions and decision must be based on the law. Even in any country, if we have to give the death penalty, even then that will be according to the the procedure established in law and procedure mentioned in law. No one can arbitrarily do anything, or through his own will can't do anything. That he has to follow law in every condition. Present arbitrary governance or misuse of power, prevents that this rule of law or this constitution, if it is there, then it prevents the arbitrariness. Means no one can do their own, मतलब मन मर्जी का लॉ नहीं होगा, या अपनी मर्जी से कोई शासन नहीं कर सकता. दे वन हैज़ टू वर्क अकॉर्डिंग टू द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन that is there. Now we come to the syllabus. that early constitutional developments under British rule. Of course, we know about a little bit about the history that our country was in control of Britishers. First of all, this it was East India Company up to 1857. Then after that, after 1857, exactly after 1858, that India comes under the direct British rule. So we will study that how our legal or our how our administrative frameworks start taking shape while it was within the control of East India Company, and after and that we will try to study that how it changes after the British took over entirely after 1858. Then finally we will study that how after independence constituent assembly make our constitution finally. So first of all we will look over here that this is the regulating act of 1850 sorry 1773. This was the first attempt from the British side to regulate the East India Company that was doing their trade over here in the Bengal, or especially in India, specifically in Bengal. This was the first attempt to regulate the affairs of the EIC or East India Company by the British Parliament at that time. Why it is called Regulating Act? Because it was the kind of it put kind of a regulation on the East India Company, because they were taking loan heavily and they were making huge money through lots of corruption over here in Bengal or in India, and that's why British Parliament put some restriction or some regulation over the East India Company officials in India. This it establishes a system of governance in British territories in India, because of course at that time not entire India was under the East India Company. The territories that were in control of British territories, or the territories of India that were in control of East India Company, they make these regulating act for those territories. Created the office of the Governor General of Bengal with Warren Hastings as the first appointee. This may be an objective question, that who was the first Governor General of Bengal. This was Warren Hastings, and provided as a Supreme Court in Calcutta to address dispute. This was not like as of a present Supreme Court. This was somewhat different. But these are some factual information what regulating act changes at that point of time, and this was of course the first attempt to regulate Indian administration. Of course that was under East India Company at that point of time. Later Pitt's India Acts and acts after this on start coming after Pitt's India Acts, then Charter Acts, etc. They try to regulate it more and more. Pitts, because at that point of time British PM whose name was surname was Pitts, that's why after his name this is Pitts India Act 1784. This distinguished between commercial and political function of the EIC, because up to this time that EIC or East India Company was not only the trading company, but it also have lots of area in Bengal to administer. So that's why this was at that point of time its political as well as commercial function was clearly distinguished, and for taking care of the commercial function there was court of directors, and for taking care of this political function there was board of control, a new body formed after this Pitts India Act. Board of control as written over here, to oversee Indian affairs, strengthen the British government's control over the EIC administration. Of course, as we can see that till now, up to Regulating Act of 1773, EIC was ruling according to its own wish, but because it was just a company. But after Regulating Act of 1773, British Parliament starts to control East India Company's functions more and more. It starts to control of East India Company's functions. Next, Charter Acts of 1790 through to 1853. In this period, after every 20 years, there comes Charter Acts. Like first in 1793, then 1813 and 1833, and then 1853. This was the last Charter Act, that was a Charter Act of 1853. These acts give kind of extension or kind of permission to East India Company to rule India, and start changing certain provisions time to time as it comes. And first of all, like we can see, Charter Act of 1793, a regular renewal of the EAC's charter to administer Indian territories. It establishes that it says that after every 20 years we will renew the charter of East India Company to rule India, or can say to administer India at that point of time. So next Charter Act comes in 1813, and Charter Act of 1813. The major change that comes under Charter Act of 1813 was monopoly of EIC's East India Company to trade in India, except for the trade in tea and opium, was cancelled or ended over here. And exactly, this was not trade of opium, but this was trade with China. And these two monopolies, except these two monopolies, tea and to trade with China, rest of the monopolies got ended over here in 1813 Charter Act. In 1833 Charter Act centralized power with the Governor General of India, abolishing the Governor General of Bengal's separate title. Of course, this was the time when Governor General of India, first time the Governor General of India, that was William Bentinck. The post of Governor General of India was created in 1833 Charter Act, and rest of the governors work under the Governor General of India. That was William Bentinck at this point of time, first Governor General of India. Then 1853 Charter Act introduced open competition for civil service, and this was the act where no such thing was defined that for how long now after can East India Company rule in India, because in previous Charter Acts there was defined that East India Company will rule for next every 20 years. So in Charter Act of 1853 no such limit was given over there. And then after 1857 revolt took place, and then after complete took over of the administration in India by British Crown itself, and end of the East India Company's rule in India. So era of Crown rule means British Empire starts direct rule in India. Till now, after 1773, from Regulating Act to up to 1858, British Crown were trying to tighten their control over the East India Company, but here the role of East India Company completely ended, and now Crown start ruling directly in India. That is from 1858 to 1947, up to the independence of India. And then after Government of India Act 1858, this act comes after the 1857 revolt, and changes certain basic things in administration of the India, and established the office of the Secretary of the State for India in Britain. This office first time created in 1858 through the Act of 1858, and this officer sits over there in London itself. And then comes Indian Council Acts 1862, 92, 1909. These acts comes and makes many changes in legislative councils at provincial level as well as at a central level. We don't need to go in much detail what actually how numbers goes on changes in legislative council, what legislative council actually means. Just we have to understand here that after the Crown's rule, there comes some sort of changes in administration, and for to control the administration under control Crown's rule, the British Parliament brings Indian Council Acts, that are 1861, 92 and 1909. Briefly written over here about these acts, like 1892 expand the council and gave Indian limited legislative powers. These were not exactly this legislative unit that exists today, but these are kind of we can say kind of legislative impression of legislative things that was happening, that British were doing over that point of time. 1909 Morley Minto reforms. Morley was the Secretary of the State and Minto was the Governor General at that point of time, and Governor General exactly Viceroy, because in after 1858 the title of Governor General of India changed to Viceroy of India. So Morley was Secretary of the State and Minto was the Viceroy at that point of time. They also bring certain reforms, like reforms from the point of view of the British, but Indian were against those things, like here comes communal award, that separate electorate etc. comes here. So these were the changes that in administration was going on through these acts of 61, 92 and 1909, that is also known as Morlemento reforms. Then comes Government of India Act 1990, that also known as Montesquieu Chelmsford reforms. And it what it did, it established first time a bicameral legislature at the central level. And bicameral means lower house and upper house at the central level, like today Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, somewhat like that. Then comes Government of India Act 1935. This is the biggest act and having the great influence over the present constitution of the India. Lots of the provision of the present Indian constitution is taken from this Government of India Act 1935. It proposed all India federation. This is never fully implemented because this was having proposal that there should be a all India federation of all princely states, and the states that comes under directly under British rule, and rest of the states. There may be a federation of such states, but this never comes into existence because of the refusal from the princely states. Introduced provincial autonomy. Princes were much more autonomous for their decision, because in Act of 1919, that was Montesquieu Chelmsford reforms, these provinces were more in the control of center, and this control was loosened at the time of this Government of India Act 1935, and it introduced provincial autonomy, expanded franchise, and created elected provincial legislature. Actually, this element of election was there from 1909 Act, and after this, with time to time, franchise that who can actually vote goes on extended with the time, laid the foundation for the federal structure that inspired India's constitution. Of course, as I already told you, that due to this due to this 1935 Act, we start moving toward federal structure, and lots of provision of our original and the final constitution that comes from the Government of India Act 1935. And later, how Congress, especially because Congress was the main party that was fighting for the independence of India at that point of time, established it in 1885. Congress was established in 1885 at the viceroyship of Lord Dufferin, and how it started demanding for it, our own constitution and independence, etc. And the story written over here. No need to read this with respect to the topic we are studying, because this is the development how time to time Congress start putting forward its demand, and once finally at the time of independence, Cripps mission come to India because they want the support of India for Second World War that was already going on since 1939, and that's why they sent Cripps mission to India and propose India to self-rule under dominion status. Of course, these were not still not talking about the complete independence. India rejected it because Indian leaders were skeptical about the British intention at that point of time, because war was already going on, and there was no clue what actually going to be the world order after the war ended. And then Quit India movement 1942. This took place, and cabinet mission. This was the finally cabinet mission that actually give the final framework or final structure to the Constituent Assembly that makes our constitution. And this Constituent Assembly makes our constitution, and it took almost 2 years, 11 months, and 18 days to complete our constitution. And the first meeting of the Constituent Assembly. Constituent Assembly was the body actually indirectly elected from the different provinces of India. And that was they seated over there after its first sitting, that first session or first sitting that took place in December 9, 1946, and make our constitution. And Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as the permanent chair of the chairman of the Constituent Assembly. They later became first president of India also. and the drafting committee, B.R. Ambedkar, who were the chairman of this drafting committee that actually makes the constitution. And there were different committees and with different leadership like Jawaharlal Nehru and Ambedkar. That these all committees works to make the constitution of India, and finally after this much amount of time, final constitution come into picture, and this constitution was adopted by Indian Constituent Assembly on November 26, 1949, and enforced or come in effect after January 26, 1950. So this is celebrated as the Republic Day of India. What is the actual difference between these two dates is that November 26, 1949, adoption of the constitution, certain provision of the constitution comes in force after November 26 itself, and finally complete constitution comes in force after January 26, 1950. And this was written about the significance of the constitution that we will study in the later part of the syllabus.